Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle!
The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is campeón!
All creatures great and small! ¡De la Vega! ¡No me pongo de pie! ¡De rodillas!
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Gold Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. I am Jeremiah O'Shan, and we're doing kind of a funky little midweek thing this week because we didn't have a game, and I wanted to record, and Charlie Boehm, nice enough to come join me. So welcome to the show, Charlie. We're getting to hear a lot from you lately.
Yeah, I think we're doing a touch by touch review of Cristian Roldan's
exactly
USMNT masterclass, right? I figured that's why you called me.
That is the main. Honestly, it was like that's why I want to record, because I want to, like, all seriousness. Let's talk about Cristian, because this was kind of like
the smug satisfaction of Seattle Sounders culture, boiled down into black tar form.
Exactly. Like when he didn't get called in, it was very much a thing, right? We're like, what does Poch need to see? I mean, Jackson Reagan should be there. Cristian Roldan should be there. An injured Jordan Morris probably should be there for the way that we're thinking. Why are they not calling in Danny Masovsky? But in all seriousness, Cristian gets called. It ends up being a great story, though, because Henry Bushnell, another friend of the pod, did this great story for The Athletic about talking to Cristian about how he was basically on vacation and he gets this call and they're like, hey, would you be able to go to camp if you get called? Like, I guess Craig Weibel calls him. It's like, hey, could you get out there if you needed to be? And Cristian, because he is such a team first guy, is like, yeah, let's do this. So he gets the call, like, apparently like Tuesday morning he's had, or maybe Wednesday morning, either way. What day do you know what day he showed up?
I think they must have. I think he traveled on, reported on Wednesday. So it must have. So maybe I think the wheels were in motion Tuesday.
Okay. So anyway, he basically got Monday off. He only got one day off, and this is a guy who has been sort of played so much. He's carrying an injury of some sort, but he doesn't even second guess it. He's like, yes, this is my chance to get back in. He's been all but openly campaigning to get back into the national team. He has been playing he's done everything he could have possibly done, I think, at the club level to show that he belongs here. And then he did get a few minutes against South Korea, right?
Yeah, came off the bench.
And then he looked fine, not anything spectacular, but then he's starting against Japan to the degree that you can have a must-win friendly. This was kind of a must-win friendly. Really, like the mood around the U.S. national team is so bad. Poch is actually like fighting with media about saying, why is everyone so negative? Just because we suck doesn't mean you have to say we suck. Just because no one likes my call-ups doesn't mean you have to say that my call-ups suck.
But he played the old college football coach.
Right.
Criticize me, together. Don't criticize my players.
Right.
I can take the criticism, but the you're. I mean, he used some pretty strong language actually on Monday. I have to say that it was the negativity was damaging. No, I was on the Zoom, and he was clearly on the agenda for him to call out the criticism and the negativity. And I think he used phrases on the lines of, you're damaging the country basically with this negativity. So far out from the World Cup, but we need to stay together. And I'm still, we're still in experimental mode and we know what we're doing. We're not amateurs and so forth. So it was rather striking.
Yeah. And so before we get into Roldan, because this is I was struck a little bit by that. Like, here's a coach who has played at Newell's Old Boys. He has come through he's been there and done that all over the world. He has experienced what real vitriol is. He's experienced what real negative fan culture is, like where players are being threatened. And don't get me wrong, the U.S. national team has has elements that are extremely toxic and gross, and I don't find myself attracted to it. But also, it's like online. It's nothing really when you're. I mean, I can see how it gets into you, but like I was surprised at how he just came for it. Like, I was surprised at how much pushback there was from Poch.
Yeah, and this quickly got into kind of a levels discourse, because I think like on what level is he speaking here, and
right, okay.
Reflecting on it afterwards, and then hearing from other people. I do think there's something to the line of reasoning that he was one sort of sending a message to players, defending the players, and trying to sort of use that bully pulpit, but also just doesn't think American soccer is at a level where they have the wherewithal to call him out this way. Right. And it's not so much personal, but just sort of maybe a little bit of, layered communication there, which is it's all kind of fun to wallow around in, I have to say. And we're a year in, so maybe this is the stuff that happens at this phase of any project.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess in some ways, maybe this is in a weird way good. Like, this is maybe American meat. Like, I understand that other countries, the national team coach is oftentimes battered by their press, and they probably push back. And so maybe this is all part of the evolution, the natural evolution of the relationship between the media and the national team. And I mean, on some level, I don't know, what do you make of his, we're a year out here, or not, a little less than a year out. Tickets, the lottery opened up for World Cups. We may as well talk about this right now. We will talk about Cristian Roldan, but you've got me thinking about things, and this is how this show goes.
It's an iterative process.
It's been. Where do you feel like we are right now? It feels in some ways like a week ago we were as low as we could get, and then somehow today I don't think we are anywhere near the same depths. And there's no good reason other than we beat Japan, and Cristian Roldan showed that he should probably be a starter for the national team in the World Cup.
Welcome to the "it's so over, we're so back" cycle.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can never get far away from it when you have a critical mass of people who care deeply about the team in question. And I have to say too, a key part of this now that it's Wednesday, and like Poch was straight up basically didn't apologize, but he was apologetic in his remarks in extensive. I mean, this guy he does not mind taking questions. He does not mind talking to the media. He's not,
that's good.
Doesn't treat these availabilities like a trip to the dentist, like many do, for better and for worse. And he basically, towards the end of last night's post-game presser, he said his wife called him out. It's like, why were you so mean? Why were you like that yesterday? Those are nice guys. And he basically said, in France and England, they were a lot more harsh, but so it's not, but I wasn't directing it to them. It's not directed to you guys. It's the ones that are not professional. And he kind of alluded to
QSMNT is what he's calling
clout
out.
Chasing people looking for followers without even saying social media specifically. He was sort of
without
calling
even
out,
saying tactical manager's name. Amazing.
I don't know, but like, I mean, the other thing is too, he's he's had to adjust. And it's not my biggest gripe, if I had one for Poch in general, is it's not always clear to me how much homework he did about the culture here and what he was kind of the nature of what he was stepping into. And it's not clear to me how much homework he's doing on the week to week, even since taking the job, because there's this running somewhat of a joke, but it factors into the Roldan discussion. Like, is Poch just watching the biggest game of the week in MLS? Like, is he watching Sunday Night Soccer more so than like crunching tape from hundreds of players? Because when the Vancouver Whitecaps end up playing Inter Miami a bunch, and now we got Tristan Blackman and Sebastian Berhalter on the team, and then the Seattle Sounders chop up Inter Miami in the Leagues Cup final, and Cristian Roldan is on a plane two days
I'm sure
later. Right?
He's like, what about this Obed Vargas kid? How do we get him into camp? And, and a few people look at him like, oh yeah, we blew that one pretty bad.
Maybe he's only watching the Apple TV Plus games and not the season pass games. I don't know. But it's also it's pretty hilarious too, because it seems like every press conference he gets in some dig at the people who he's decided there's this vocal minority who have a problem with MLS players. So he was saying that, he was comparing on Monday, he was talking about his own experiences on the Argentine national team as a player. And he was part of the group that seemed to be one of the best Albiceleste teams of the past couple generations, which is the Marcelo Bielsa team of the early 2000s. And they were on a really great run of success going into the 2002 World Cup. And then they went 3 and out. Now they were in a group of death with England. I think it was England, Nigeria, and Sweden. I'm guessing. And they had the same record as the USMNT with 4 points from 3 games, but didn't go through on the. They went out in 3rd place. But he said he sort of like sidelong said, wait, that was the USA's best World Cup, right? And it was the best in the modern era. And he said, and half the team was from MLS, right? And Michael Kammerman next to him, the media guy, is sort of like confirming the stuff that he seems to vaguely know. And he's like, I don't know where this idea came that MLS players can't make it to the national team. It was sometime after that. It's like, wow, we're having a discourse about the 2002 World Cup suddenly here from multiple angles. Yes. Like Poch keeps us guessing. So great for that.
Yeah, that is, I will say that there is a fair question, I think. Like, why is, in all seriousness, now that we're back on the Cristian Roldan thing, what does he really have to do? I mean, here's a guy who held his own against literally 3 world-class opponents, Botafogo, Atletico Madrid, and PSG. Never looks remotely out of place. The Sounders midfield never gets overrun by unironic, like no hyperbole, 3 of the best teams in the world. And then he comes out and every week he's arguably one of, if not the most influential and best players on the field every single week. And then yes, he's a big part of dismantling Miami in that final. But that was not really surprising to anyone who had watched him. I mean, how do you chalk it up? Why did it take so long for him to get attention? And like, why can't Jackson Reagan, who, like, not to make this about, woe is us Sounders fans, but it is weird. Jackson Reagan seems like he has the skill set that he's a great passer. He's a good defender, at least within a system. And he can't get a sniff other than this, the throwaway call up that he got at the beginning of the year for Camp Cupcake. What do you make of all that?
So there's a couple angles here. One, the Roldan thing is the knock on him in national team circles, I think, and among the fan base is that he had 30 something caps before he got this late call, right?
And he doesn't have a goal. He's never scored.
What are we going to see that's new? And it's true. Like he was, and I think he suffered from being sort of lumped into this. He and Jordan Morris were kind of unofficially dubbed the vibes guys for the 22 World Cup squad, right?
I mean, him especially, for sure.
And I think people were irate. Berhalter made some sort of late breaking, controversial or much debated decisions that in his roster. And so it's like, so someone sees a player like Roldan, who I can't remember if he played. If he played, it wasn't much. And he didn't play in the World Cup. Yeah, I didn't think so, but he was perceived to be part of this, a great locker room guy and a glue guy.
Right,
And of course that's a little disrespectful to his skill set, but it didn't seem like he wasn't in the rotation to get minutes. So why is he taking up a spot for vibes that could have been occupied by Ricardo Pepi or, one of the other late snubs? And so I think some of that's not his fault. Some of it was just the sense that he wasn't, did he have the skill set and the athleticism to handle the jump in overall complexity and difficulty of a central midfield in an international game, especially a high quality game. And I think in an interesting parallel, that's kind of a little bit of what was directed at Jesus Ferreira around the same time and afterwards, that this was a CONCACAF level player and maybe someone that could help you qualify or compete at the Gold Cup, and not necessarily someone who can shift into top gear to keep pace at the very, very top level. So, but again, as I said this on the Scuff podcast when Roldan came up on Labor Day, players are fungible quantities, right? They evolve, they change, they get better, they get worse, they mature. And so for me, I'm very empathetic to the Seattle point of view here, because he's been consistent and he's also been consistently growing, right? And just kind of staying at a high level and finding new facets and new ways to impact games for a very, very good team. But I think if you're maybe even a little bit Euro focused and you're not necessarily super tuned into MLS, it's probably easy for that, the gradations of his form and his evolution to maybe go unnoticed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that all makes sense. That said, I did legitimately, what I only really saw most of the second half, so I didn't see a lot of the first half, but from what I saw, he looked like he made a real impact. Like he had, like the press looked better. He was in the, it was his pressure led directly to several turnovers. I know in the first game, the U.S. press looked non-existent. I mean, they were going through the motions,
poorly
but they were
executed.
not,
yeah,
right. Very poorly executed pressing. That was not the case against Japan. Admittedly, not the first choice Japan, but still, I mean, I guess you could argue this isn't the first choice United States either. But you beat Japan. I believe this is like the first win over a top 25 team in like 7 tries or 8 tries or something like that.
It's Poch's first in 8, and it's the first non-Mexico victory against the top 25, I think it is, opponent since the 2022 World Cup, Iran.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a long.
So that's been a while, right? That's a cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a full cycle.
It's.
And I was just gonna say he just looked good. He looked very competent. Yeah. I
think it's more too also what. He had a couple, I think what the naysayers approach would be that there were a couple of, it's in a high leverage position, right? I mean, the 3-4-2-1 that they played, and that was a big factor. And it's a fascinating plot here that, US teams this is changing obviously in the modern era and everything, but typically the sort of default for US players growing up is a 4-player back line. And you can, there's different, permutations of how the midfielder and some strikers look, but it wasn't common, at least in my experience, that US players were comfortable in a 3-back until relatively recently. And so then needing a win, the USMNT go to their spiritual home of Columbus, where Wilfred Nancy has enshrined the 3-4-2-1, Nancy ball system to build an elite MLS club. And they go 3-4-2-1 and everything works better. This was something that Berhalter had tried. He wanted this as a club in the bag, as a plan B tactically. And it was very mixed. And it wasn't something that he really trusted for long periods in really big games. And then everyone just looked so much more comfortable. But those two kind of holding midfielders, you can call it a box midfield, right? But like, in order for in this case Pulisic and Zendejas to go and do their thing and be incisive in the attacking end, you need 2 very reliable, well-rounded central midfielders behind them. And Tyler Adams and Cristian Roldan, that's an interesting look. And there's the question is, do you have this was perceived to be a solid area, central midfield, in terms of the player pool. but it took, and maybe, immediately people jumped maybe prematurely to, well, wow, imagine if Roldan can do this, imagine how Weston McKennie will look, right? But I don't know. I mean, he's so selfless, I think, as a player, and his IQ is so high that he just sort of fit in like the reminiscent of that old Busquets saying, right? You may not have seen Roldan, but if you watch Roldan, you watch the game, right? And he
Right.
was doing the little things, just getting the ball off his foot a little quicker to get a buildup going or spring a transition. He was getting in that one little touch to break up a buildup on the other end, like just doing all the stuff that most listeners see him do on a week-to-week basis. And he has other abilities, right? He can roam forward, he can do different stuff, he can be incisive in other ways, but he was the glue guy. And this time it wasn't in an abstract locker room chemistry conversation. It was making everything kind of hum along. And Tyler Adams, we can now say, I mean, he needs that. A lot of the 2022 cycle the debate was, can Tyler Adams be a lone six? I think now we know that that the ceiling is higher when he's not. He's best paired with someone, and Roldan's, I think, right in the mix there as to be part of a dual pivot or whatever you want to call it, as someone who can just make life easier for those around them.
Yeah, and I would say, and I don't know that I'm being totally serious about saying he should be the starter, but there is something to be said about him being a better pairing with a Tyler Adams than like a Weston McKennie, who part of his value proposition, let's not talk about what he's willing to do or not willing to do, but part of Weston McKennie's, like, the reason you had Weston McKennie on the field is because you think he provides something offensively, and he's not just a six, that he's not just a guy who's going to make the game dirty and do all these, like, maybe he could do the Cristian Roldan role if you asked him to, but he's not being his best self. Whereas Cristian Roldan is showing the ability, and has shown the ability this year, to, even though he has some other skills, like this is a guy who scored a bunch of goals, who has 8 assists, admittedly with a bunch of secondary assists, but he can do things offensively, but like he's also willing to just, like you said, just be the glue guy, just be the guy who is helping others be their best selves. And he doesn't need to be, he's perfectly okay being the 11th best player on his team if that's what the situation calls for it.
And I think it's a good example of a facet to the whole MLS versus Europe conversation is, and this is, you hear it maybe in the Diego Luna aspect of, should someone like Luna be going to Europe as quickly as possible? Or is there something you get from being the guy, being a trusted player with responsibility and visibility and leadership expectations in MLS, right? And Paxton Aronson described this as something that he thought the Colorado Rapids could give him that Europe couldn't, which is a little bit striking. But this idea of Aronson has the 10 shirt with the Rapids, and he has to do something different maybe than he would be doing for Eintracht Frankfurt this year. And whatever, of course that's a controversial idea, but Roldan has been expected to be a leader and a day-to-day dependable, do everything central midfielder for a very good MLS team for a long time. And there's something to be said there. And there were a couple plays that he got away with. I think there was a little bit of there was a turnover that led to a really good chance, or a pile driver off the post, if I'm remembering right, for Japan late on. But as Matt Doyle has pointed out in some of his posts and his post game wrap up of the window that came out earlier today, Japan did bring their A team, or some of their A team, onto the field in the second half, and the U.S. sort of weather that and then some, and sort of remain the protagonist in the game. And it all speaks well of Roldan. And again, as I've said to you before, I think so much of the debate about selection with the MNT is just deciding who gets in the door, right? And then once you're in the door, you have to compete in front of the coaches and in that environment. And I think he's earned the chance to get that in next month or at some point in the next few months in the final countdown. And it can't have gone unnoticed. And Henry wrote another piece last night, this time centered on Pulisic, because he's waiting around for him to come through the mix zone. And he is cool reporting and on Henry's part, just to take note that when Pulisic finished talking to the press, he stood aside just outside the zone and waited for Cristian Roldan to finish up and come through. And the two of them walked out arm in arm. So this is a guy that, is well known and respected by multiple sort of generations and groups within the MNT world. And I think that's going to count in his favor as well. So fun story, whatever happens, but it might not be over.
Yeah, it is. That is an interesting little note here that Cristian was, it's not a whole new team from 2022. There's a lot of important players from that squad, all of whom really seem to like Cristian, who, even though he wasn't playing, was the guy that everyone seemed to get along with and sort of fit in. And it would be very interesting narratively if not from practically, it seems like it makes it easier for him to step in and have a role, just because he already knows he knows most of the key players, and certainly he knows the guys who are the most influential players. So that might be an interesting little angle there.
One more thing too, I want to say, and I'm apologize to whoever posted this that I'm not remembering. I would want to credit it, but someone made a fascinating comparison, which is that Roldan could turn out to be this cycle's Kyle Beckerman.
Yeah.
And if you remember, if you go back to 2014, like for most of the lead up to the World Cup in Brazil, and even going back well further, no one thought of Kyle Beckerman as maybe not even on a 23 player roster for the USMNT's best squad, much less a best 11, a member of the starting lineup. But this quandary developed for Klinsmann with, how do you, and it's funny too, because you've reminded me, there's Jermaine Jones elements of the McKinney discourse, like really talented players playing consistently at a high level, but like where exactly does he fit in best? What's his best role? And what are you compromising when you unleash or empower McKinney or Jermaine Jones? And it was like, how can we make the Bradley Jones axis work? How can we make it work? And out of nowhere, Kyle Beckerman just comes in and just is the guy that shores everything up behind them and just makes the best decision, the cleanest touches, and keeps things simple every time. And did it so often that he ends up being a World Cup starter. And it was a very much what we would have called the Frankenstein midfield, a year or two before Brazil, and it ended up working. And so, who knows? Maybe that's rolled on.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes No Sarietis, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible through our paid subscribers. Plans start as low as $30 a year and allow us to remain independent and mostly ad-free. Subscribers get access to all our written and podcast content, including a full-text RSS feed and a mostly ad-free podcast feed that includes every show in one spot. If you really like what we're doing, though, I'd encourage you to sign up at our higher tiers, which include all sorts of various perks. The most popular of those is our members-only Discord, where the real Sounders sickos hang out. I know I've called this group the smartest, funniest, and best-informed Sounders fans in the world, but it's more than the rough equivalent of a Sounders Mensa meeting. Discord is where we make things happen, like for real. You know the promotion the Sounders ran that offered fans the opportunity to trade in their Messi jersey for a Paul Rothrock one? That originated in our community. You'll not only be the first to know about stuff, but you also have a semi-direct line to the movers and shakers at the Sounders organization. If you want to be one of the totally normal people who occupy the Sounder at Heart Discord, just become a supporter of Sounder at Heart. Anyway, thanks for listening, and go Durs. No Sarietis, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. It would be fascinating to see it. One of the moments that I thought was really cool from the Leagues Cup, and this sort of illustrates to me the sort of like the core of what Cristian Roldan represents, is, he was the captain of this team. Stefan Fried, normally the captain, but during Leagues Cup, Steph Fried essentially yielded to Andrew Thomas. And I just thought it was an interesting little moment where when they went to raise the trophy, Cristian made sure to call over Steph and be sort of the captain normally is the one who would raise the trophy. And they made sure to have Steph there as, sort of co-raising the trophy. And it was sort of like this, here's a guy who didn't play in the tournament at all, but they also wanted to make sure they understood that it was like visible that they still look at him as a leader, even though it was, arguably Cristian's moment to be sort of the guy, and he insists on sharing the spotlight. I thought that was kind of a cool little thing.
That's culture.
Right.
That's culture there.
That's exactly. So I guess that's my, I'll now muck it up by calling attention to it, but sort of that's a decent place to transition into talking about this Leagues Cup.
I noticed though.
Yeah. Good.
I noticed that with Fry, and that was a cool moment.
Yeah, no, I thought so too. I think, and I feel like I heard something about it too, but anyway, Leagues Cup final. It's interesting how it falls on the calendar. Here happens in August, and then I assume they planned it this way, that it goes right into an international break, which is that's a perfect way to be able to do a big trophy lift, and then, hey, how about 2 weeks off, or at least 2 weeks between games? Sounders had full-blown 5 days off of training. We only today got back into availability, so we're talking 10 days after they didn't have to talk to the press for 10 days. Pretty sweet for them. But it is kind of a, as the dust settles on this, do you think, have we overstated how much we learned about the Sounders during this run? Like, for me, it did feel like an MLS Cup final, in that, and I think a lot of that is because of the pomp and everything that Messi brings. And then there was all this post fallout that sort of raised, I think, the discourse in terms of there's been a lot of chatter going on. But what do you think, as an outsider, what do you feel like you learned about the Sounders and I guess to a lesser degree, Miami?
There's definitely, I think, some parallels to what the Crew did last year, where it's not that a top team says that's what we want to go and win, right? Leagues Cup is top of our list. No, but it's a trophy. It has a financial reward, and it has the Conca Champions reward. And if you have ambition, if you want to compete in that at that level, and if you want to win things, and if you've built the overall organization that wants to be a perennial contender for hardware, you go make a run if you possibly can, and if everything lines up. And it's a way to I think rubber stamp and legitimize everything you've done to this point. And I think we both remember, have been around long enough to remember when the Sounders were perceived to have a monkey on their back, right, about winning something other than the U.S. Open Cup or winning MLS Cup, and it if you want to be considered a trophy chaser, much less a dynasty, or have those kind of conversations, you got to go and win things. And I think that's a big part of why Miami were absolutely driven to distraction by the way that a whole day played out and the way that it slipped away from them. And we know, I think that game was a little closer than maybe people are going to remember it
for sure.
There were some key leverage kind of moments, especially early in the second half, but Miami craves for that project to make sense, for all the money and the hype and everything to be vindicated. They got to go win stuff, and they've fallen short in these tournaments, the playoffs and then an Open Cup, and even Open Cup in year one. They've gotten to that final hurdle and haven't gotten it. And I think that drives them nuts. And someone like Messi, even for Messi to lose his cool and have the whole whatever happened or didn't happen with Pedro de la Vega, and then of course all the Suarez Busquets stuff, like they know what a huge difference there is between number one and number two on that day. And Seattle does too, because a lot of the current squad have been in these situations, and you gotta get over that hump. And then the value kind of cascades from there because the momentum you get is huge. And now look at Miami. We're all watching and waiting to see. They try not to play during international breaks, and they haven't. And now we really don't know what kind of Inter Miami we're going to see down the stretch. Are they going to be just playing with the anger of 1,000 scorned superstars, or are they going to have a motivational problem and maybe have to fix themselves? So that's what these tournaments can do.
It is interesting. And I'll tell you something from my own experience. So going into this game, everyone who would listen, I basically told, look, I think the Sounders have already sort of won because they get to host this big event, because there's going to be 70,000 people there, because they get to have their day on the national spotlight with a beautiful day, not to overdo this, but a beautiful day in Seattle. It sets up perfectly. You really could not have drawn up a better scenario for the Sounders. And so I was basically telling everyone that would listen, in some ways, I think the Sounders have always won. It doesn't even matter what the result is. Now, in hindsight, that was coping. That was pre-coping. That was me just telling a story to myself, because the reality is that, and I think there's truth to it. Like, there was an element of they got something out of it. But winning is so much, it changes everything so much. Like, it changes like, you're right. The game was a lot closer. I rewatched the game and I was actually struck because at the end of that game, I remember feeling like the Sounders just dominated Miami. Like, I don't even remember this being there was just never in doubt. And then when I rewatched it, it was like, okay, the Sounders were definitely the better team in the first half. But then for the first 15 minutes or so of the second half, Miami was all over them. I mean, it could have very easily been 1-1, if not 2-1 through 60 minutes. And then, to his credit, Brian Schmetzer made some really good subs that changed the game, and it sort of evened things out, and it put it into a position where the Sounders could really control it. I don't think the Sounders really got control of it until Georgie Manungu got taken down in the box. But that sub was another example of Brian just sort of pulling the right levers and it going right. And yes, the Rothrock thing ends up being a great narrative. An unbelievable, let's be honest. It's like if you wrote a movie and you decided that you were going to have your local kid be the poster child of the matchup with the best player in the world, and then you're going to win, okay, but to have him score in the 90th minute and then get get a curtain call.
He kissed the badge.
Yeah, kiss the badge. Oh, that was so perfect. Oh, but it's too much. It's almost true. Like, can we dial it down a little? Because this is a little on the nose. But it really happened, and it was an amazing thing. But to get back to my point, winning really does pull it all together, because you could tell a lot of the same stories if they lose that game, but they don't hit the same. They, like, the whole built not bought thing, the whole narrative that we've been able to run with about the player pipeline and everything. It's good and it means something, but it means so much more when you win and you do it the way they did. For me, it almost flips the whole. I don't want to say the rest of the season is gravy, because again, this is maybe pre-coping, and if they bomb out here, we will be talking about what a bummer thing it is. But it does sort of prove it's sort of like a it proves the theory. It shows that this can work, even if it wasn't the way that everyone wanted it to.
Yeah, and what vindication for Craig Weibel too, right? Whose roster construction methodology has been under a lot of scrutiny
from us too,
validly so, understandably. Yeah. They have eschewed as an organization the kind of signings that Miami has made to jump the line and to jump ahead and to speed up the pace of the whole project. And the whole justification was, we think we can build a better team that's a cohesive unit, right? Not just 1 to 11 or 1 to 14, but 1 to 22. We think we've built the better mousetrap, and there is no greater challenge and dichotomy than to have Miami come to Seattle in front of a full house or damn close to it on a big day like that with a trophy and some money on the line. I mean, that's enormous. And for some of those guys who have been filling in for the injured stars or the someone ahead of them on the depth chart who has a bigger number next to their name, to the way it did. It all is pretty poetic. And I think, I consider myself fortunate to have covered a cup final in Seattle. I mean, it's still my only game at Lumen was that.
I can't believe we didn't fly you out
MLS
for
Cup
this.
final.
My bad. I should have got you on a plane and brought you out here.
There we go. Let's go. And who knows? Maybe there'll be a
MLS Cup,
a playoff trip. Yeah, but that's a special place with a special vibe. I took a million pictures that day, before and in the lead up, and there's just something about that stadium and that community and that culture for a big game. And even at that, right, that the floor is high in Seattle, but you still got approximately double or close to double the number of bodies through the gates, right? Because it's a big game. It's a big
more
name.
than double. Yeah.
And every single one of those. Right. So every single one of those newer bodies or more casual fans or less connected members of your local soccer community who comes and, checks it out on the big day. I mean, that every one of those is a recruitment opportunity and a chance to build and someone to convert. So, to manifest it quite literally in the form of a Messi jersey for a Rothrock jersey was clever. And I hope I'll get to pick Schmetz's brain about that sometime. Whether how much planning and foresight went into that bon mot of his,
I don't think any. I think he was like free.
That.
I think maybe it was, but it felt like very of the moment. Like he just was like freestyling, and it was just like he was just like ripping names of players, and maybe he gave it more. Maybe I'm not giving enough credit, but it felt just very like of the moment, and he was just like in a fugue state of like, oh yeah, they have Messi, but we have Rothrock, and we have Reed, Baker Whiting, and we have Jackson Reagan. I don't know. I can't remember all the players he said. I guess I should know this. It's like lore now. I should know everyone he mentioned. But it was an amazing little moment. And I will say, for those of you who are Sounder at Heart readers and Nos Audietis listeners who don't know it, the truth is, the absolute truth is that promotion idea came from our Discord. That's not me being flip or anything. It literally was a suggestion that someone in our Discord made, and as a joke, I just texted it to the Sounders media guy, and then I just looked at this today because the Seattle Times is working on a story. At 11 a.m., I texted that to him. When I showed up at training, like 45 minutes later, he tells me that might actually happen. There's legs to this thing. And then like within hours, it was a full-blown program that they were running. It was kind of amazing. I don't want to take too much.
Think about they're going to turn those Messi jerseys for a profit on eBay. So, 4D chess here.
4D chess, exactly. No, that's actually, I would love to find out what is happening to all those jerseys. Like, are they donating them? Are they burning them? Are they selling them? Like that would really be upcycling to be able to sell them.
Yes, exactly. Close the loop. Exactly.
But it has ended up, it's just almost like too much how good of a narrative this whole thing ended up being, in terms, like, you could not have possibly put two more, like, in a sense, Philly might have more involvement from their academy. But if you just like look at the concept of, here's a team that has been around since 1974, but has really been continuously operating without any irony since 93. And all the way that predates MLS by really any reasonable way of looking at it. And they've had this long arc of consistent success, at least since their rebirth in the 90s, all the way up to now. And then you're going up against a team who is literally just trying to conjure a brand from almost thin air, and to have it play out the way that it did, and then to have them melt down the way that they did at the end, which was just so, again, almost like too fitting, that these players who really thought that they were going to come to MLS and just dominate. And then what did you make of that whole post-game scene? It was kind of surreal because I don't know that anyone that I've talked to, even Miami people, I don't know, have really tried to defend it in terms of, other than it's not that big of a deal. But no one looks at that and says, "Oh, there's a clear." No one denies that there's a very clear aggressor and then a response to that. Like this is very clearly what's happening here.
Yeah, look, I hope I phrase this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm excusing anything or minimizing it, but because it's terrible behavior by veteran players who've played at the game's top levels, who've played in the biggest stages in the world and won some of the biggest trophies. They should know better. They should have their act together. And for it to be, teenagers and young early 20 somethings who've driven them to that point, it just adds to the surreal nature of it. But there's a compliment in there. There's a twisted form of tribute that they are paying, which is that you think about, there's plenty of designated players and veteran superstars and big names that have come to this league over the years and not necessarily been all in, or have not found, have not had their full competitive instincts, the things that made them great, really activated in North America for a whole variety of reasons. But for Suarez and Busquets and those guys, they're in. I mean, you can't question their commitment, I guess. And again, I know it's maybe a bizarre framing, but
no,
I mean, I've watched Suarez a long time, and I have a grudging sort of admiration for him because he is, in strictly technical and skill set terms, possibly the greatest nine of his generation. Who he is as a person fascinates me, even if it appalls me at his worst. But this is a guy who has, at that Roy Keane level of red mist, like just an obscenely, uncontrollably competitive, dogged, professional who wants it so bad and who felt, I think he would say, whether you could get him to admit it or not, or if he even explicitly understands this about himself or not, I think on some level he feels he has to ride the line and be on the bleeding edge to be at his best. And he goes into this state, right? When you see him in a match, he's just a bastard, right? And he's living and dying with every touch. The looks on his face is he's sometimes in great pain. He's sometimes in rage. He's a euphoric, like he is this, for me, like a tragic figure in a lot of ways, but a compelling figure, a fascinating figure. And so for him to lose his rag because Obed Vargas was better than him, right? I mean, what a tribute to Vargas. And while it's so unfair, I think De La Vega, if everything played out even remotely like what it's been reported, what a horrible position for that poor guy to be in. But what a compliment that you made Leo Messi mad enough to be petty. Like, I mean, it's almost like gilding the trophy another layer.
Right. Yeah. And we've kind of gone through the discourse, I think, on the Messi thing. Where I come down on it, though, is he probably said the stuff that he's accused of doing. I don't know that it matters. Like people say all kinds of crazy shit when they're playing games, even after games. I'm not really that interested in, but I do feel like you're right. I don't think Pedro wants to be in the middle of this. I don't think Obed also wants to be in the middle of this. We actually talked to Obed today at training, and he was doing his best to just be like, look, a lot of stuff gets said, and I don't take that much from it. And I'm not going to, he didn't even really want to talk about what happened with him and Suarez or him and Busquets. And I think the Sounders just all want to sort of, they don't want to get wrapped up into like, let Miami deal with this.
Play these guys in a couple of weeks, right?
Exactly.
So that's a factor
that's the
too.
Other thing. Yeah, on Tuesday they're going to be playing them again in Miami, and it's, I don't know, it's all,
that's a can't miss, right? I mean, that should be
for sure.
Yeah. What an occasion. The schedule makers did us a real favor there. And
even the Galaxy this week, they're playing the Galaxy this weekend. They just played the Galaxy twice, once in the semifinals for this tournament. It's sort of surreal how these things work out. Like last year they played LAFC 3 times in the span of like a few weeks, all in different competitions. Again, very strange. Like they played them in Open Cup, in Leagues Cup, and in League, and then of course they would play them again in the playoffs. But it is funny how these things work out sometimes. But
small note too. You just reminded me of I just wrote a piece about Sebastian Berhalter because he just got profiled in the MLS Soccer sort of video profile series called Breakaway, which is they do some great stuff. RF people and the team at Starting 11, which is a great set of creators, and get great access to follow players around. This is the same series that went with Diego Luna to get coffee and learn about him, going to work at a Dutch Brothers and stuff to improve his people skills. And so they followed Sebastian Berhalter around, and in the course of writing the accompanying piece, I was digging back through a bunch of interviews with him, and he's been asked about the Messi stuff. He was asked about it by Scuffed. And they did an interview with him on Friday at USMNT camp. And he was saying, he was talking about how they nobody switched shirts with Messi after the Whitecaps CCC series, where Whitecaps basically kicked him around, right? Like we're not, if not dominant, we're the better team over both legs.
Yeah, kind of similar to what happened with the Sounders.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's like there's this whole discourse about how do you deal with the aura of Messi and the Fab, what's now the Fab Five, I guess, with Rodrigo de Paul on side. How do you find the right balance between, competing and being dogged and respecting these greats and not let the reputation sort of psych you out. And Seattle and Vancouver have set the example. And, nobody was really worried about who was going to get Messi's jersey after those games. And he was in no mood to swap jerseys with anyone, He was pretty PO'd afterwards. And I thought that was interesting. And I think Vargas said all the right things about this, right? The greatest respect you can show to a legend is go all in and give your best and beat him if you can. And I think too many MLS opponents have not found that proper approach.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It is kind of refreshing. And you'll note he did not switch jerseys after the Leagues Cup final either. He was apparently not quite in the mood to
De La Vega would have been the logical contender because his number one, his default is usually the Argentine. So.
I know. It would have been. I know it would have been perfect. It would have been a nice passing of the torch, even almost. Not to get ahead of ourselves. But what do you think?
They are human. Miami, the Stars.
Yeah. And so just want to close this. This is asking a lot. I can appreciate this, but looking forward, the Sounders have 7 games left. They are only like 12th in the Supporter Shield standings, but it all of a sudden feels like they are real. It should feel like they're real contenders because they've beat some very good teams in admittedly opportunistic situations. Like they were able to play virtually all their games in Leagues Cup at home. That most of their big wins have been at home. But when you are assessing at least the Western Conference, where do you feel like the Sounders are shaking up?
Yeah, and it's great because it's a really tasty run in on the west side of the league, and it's a lot of national pundits have been sort of dogging on the Western Conference as being less talented overall, and I think it's true. I mean, there's a bunch of real quality, both individually and collectively in the East, but now it's really, I mean, from first to let me see, from first to 7th, right? The non-play-in spots is 56 points down to 39 points, right? And there's a couple teams with games in hand. LAFC still have multiple games in hand. Vancouver and Seattle have a couple also. And top 4, I think this is where the format really does come in huge. I mean, you need to be top 4, I think, to give yourself the best chance to take advantage of this great game day atmosphere that we've been talking about. So I think and a little bit of old school MLS conventional wisdom here, right? Everything that's happened up till now or till Labor Day or thereabouts is sort of prelude for that final sprint. And they're in a good position here. Obviously you wish that you didn't have as many injuries, and the injury bug, I think, sort of still lingers when we talk about the Sounders writ large.
Yeah.
But you go in and finish. And it's not, I think if anyone can overcome not being, having home field advantage, it's Seattle, with the experience and the collective nature of everything. But LAFC is right in the mix. Vancouver, I think, is still finding another level in the post-Mueller arrival. Minnesota and San Diego are first and second and have already qualified for the playoffs for a reason. Those are excellent teams. So there's some really tasty matchups taking shape here, and I think Seattle wants to be in that top four and have the right momentum. And I mean, when you look down the stretch, and I'm having to check myself here because I haven't gotten into decision day thinking quite yet, but it's you have to go to Miami. You're away on the final day at New York City, which is just always a rough place to play for anyone. But there's very winnable home games. There's Cascadia Cup, with Vancouver coming to town, especially if you can handle LA this coming week. It's this weekend, right? That's a Saturday game, I think. So it all switches, right? And I think what a great way to go into the break, win a trophy, know that you're already in CONCACAF champions for next season, which is just so great for the organization can plan for it. The players know that box has been checked, and now you just try and get up to fifth gear and stay there. And I don't think anybody wants to deal with Seattle in a playoff type environment. It's we all know what they're about at this point, and importantly, they themselves know what they're about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Sounders getting to fourth is going to be really key, and they don't have a lot of. All four of their remaining home games are probably must win if they want to be top four. They probably need to find 2 or 3 more points from the other 3 road games. I believe they're at Miami, they're at Austin, and they are at New York City. And none of those are gimme points by any stretch of the imagination. Those are all games that will have challenges. They're not necessarily unwinnable games, but they aren't, they're not going to be, no one's handing them anything at this point. And I think the difference between finishing 5th and 4th is going to be pretty big, especially if it's, a likely matchup with LAFC in that 4-5 game. Having home field advantage obviously is going to be pretty important to that. But then whoever comes out of, if it's a 4-5 with LAFC and Sounders, whoever comes out of that is going to have to like their chance, San Diego has had an amazing season. Vancouver has had an amazing season, but either one of them feel like teams that both LAFC and the Sounders will like their chances against in a knockout game, even if it is on the road.
There's just a fundamental question of pedigree, particularly post-season pedigree with San Diego as an expansion side. Minnesota, their top side is excellent, but there are some limitations that have been much discussed over the course of the season. And if anybody watched Sun Heung-min over the international break, you know that is possibly the free radical in this whole mix, because you have a match winner on a already very good team, a very well-built side that knows how to win big games. And now you've got this extra sprinkling of world-class ability that's now hitting stride, that they are going to be a problem.
Yeah, no, I LAFC is definitely the team in the West that still gives me the most pause in terms of who I feel like, who am I most worried about playing in a knockout game. And I think LAFC is probably at the top of my list, even though they're right now, I think 5th in the West. So
yes. Yeah. 3 points back of the Sounders with the 1 game in hand on Seattle. Right.
So anyway, it's going to be an interesting end to the season. It always seems to be. And before I let you go, Poch is going to he's going to see the job through to the World Cup, right? There's no, we're going to close the loop on this. That's what's going to happen, right?
We can't, crazy stuff happens all the time in this sport, and particularly around USMNT. It's always possible, but that is one area of the whole discourse, the criticism, where I actually saw some fairly, serious people talking about whether, should he be on the hot seat, or who could you bring in these final months if he's out? And there's logistics, there's organizational identity and finances that go into this. So we have to remember he's already made clear in public statements, because he's gotten asked repeatedly about open jobs, particularly the Tottenham job when Ange Postecoglou got fired. He's been asked, there's been a couple of those kind of things that have popped up, and he said it's impossible. Like I think he was obliquely referring to, he's got a huge release clause. I think The Athletic or one of the big UK outlets has reported that's one of the biggest release clauses in world soccer. It's some high number, somewhere beyond $20 million or something crazy money. It would take crazy money to buy him out of his contract. And now if we know that with relative certainty, you have to ask yourself, what would it take to fire him out of his contract?
Right.
The US Soccer, which they had to go to, I think it's Ken Griffin, some venture capital or private equity billionaire to help finance this deal. This is a 2-year contract for an elite world level coach to come to the United States and take on this gig for World Cup. I think he's making somewhere around $7 million a year. I'm sure that there's other various bonuses and things like this. Is real money for anyone,
right? Much
less US Soccer, which does not have the deep pockets that they can call on, maybe the same way that one of Europe's elite federations could. So I'm guessing it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 million or beyond would it cost to can him, much less what it would cost to bring in a successor who you would think would be able to do a better job. I know why people are frustrated. There's some Jurgen Klinsmann elements to what he's done and said, and some questions about his application and his understanding of things, and if he's ideally situated in terms of the leadership. But this is the one that brung you. There's a ring on both fingers here. So I don't see anything changing US Soccer's commitment here or any ability to change what they've committed themselves. And that runs in both directions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I tend to agree that too. It's just that you hear enough things and you start to ask questions, at least among yourself. And I suppose we can end it there. But Charlie, it's always great catching up with you. It's even better reading your stuff on Sounder at Heart. We can't wait to work more with you going forward. And it's always good to hear your voice. In the meantime, where else can people find you?
Yeah, it's start on Blue Sky at CBOEHM. That's where most of my stuff goes up, and you can hit me with a DM even if you want to. And and then I'll have various this, that, and the other stuff as we've been talking about. The stretch run in MLS is kicking in now, and so try and produce some good words and throw them in front of the waiting eyeballs, and hopefully we can reconnect, and who knows, maybe we'll be in the same press box one of these weeks when the games of real consequence are looming.
So, and also are you now a regular fixture on Scuffed? Is that like a official?
I think I'm a semi-regular.
Okay.
They say nice things about me, and they've invited me back a few times. We don't have anything formal scheduled, but yeah, I'm trying to grow my skills in this audio world. So I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes to everything I can. So if you got a podcast out there, hit me up.
I did a real quick plug. I appreciated how much you guys gassed up the Sounders after the Leagues Cup final. It was really satisfying. I assume it was mostly because of you, but it was just nice to hear them saying good things about the Sounders. Vince and Adam, I always like to hear them saying nice things. So it was great.
I think Poch is a listener. I think we have to conclude because we record on Labor Day, and what the point was, and I want to be clear too. I have to. I can't say I was out there with the rolled on hashtags, but what we were pointing out was if Poch is so committed to this whole MLS bid he's doing, where he's insisting that MLS is just as competitive as many top leagues, and that there's no reason why a player can't reach the national team while playing in MLS. Okay, that's great. So you're watching MLS, you value MLS. Well, are you actually watching MLS? Because if you were, and if you're determined to call the top performers, Cristian Roldan has been doing the business for quite some time now in Major League Soccer and Leagues Cup. And if we go back a little ways, he's tends to be pretty good in CONCACAF Champions Cup as well. So why is he not getting the call? And then not 48 hours later, he gets flown in. So yes, a moment of Sounders level smug satisfaction for us over at Scuffed on that one.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And that's a perfect note to end on. I am Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Charlie Boehm and, of course, our producer, Lickett. This is Nos Audietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, and we will catch you next time.
Let's go, f***ing Sounders.